Hi everyone, you're listening to the first episode of the 2026 Freedom of Work podcast. So today we're going to be delving into how HR leaders are building technical sales teams globally, faster, smarter, and also with the use of AI as their secret weapon. So I'm joined by Arvi, and she's going to be delving into this topic, talking all about SaaS companies with pre and post sales talent, all about this retention rate and her different approaches. So yeah, if you'd like to tell the guests a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, what you're currently doing, and how you maybe got here today.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank you for having me. I feel like being the first guest on the 2026 is a lot of pressure, but hopefully I can deliver. But overall, so again, my name's Arvi. I'm the founder of Elite Talent, and we're a recruiting firm that helps SaaS companies hire top performing pre-sales and post-sales talent globally. We have a 92% retention rate of anybody that we place. So that means that 92% of everybody we've placed has stayed within the company 18 months or longer. And our focus is really placing talent that are a mixture of sales and technical people, starting from, like sales engineers all the way to customer success and technical account managers, from individual contributors all the way to leadership. And really, we have one simple mission at our company is help SaaS companies hire the people who directly impact the bottom line. Those are the ones that close the deals faster on the pre-sale side, and those are the ones that also help retain customers longer on the post-sale side. So that's about me on the business side. A little fun fact: I'm originally from Albania, which is really funny. I know when we originally spoke, you were there, and it gave me a lot of nostalgia seeing you there and just hearing talk about it. Besides that, I have a 3.5-year-old. I live in Columbus, Ohio right now. And that's and then I honestly my days right now are work and then just playing dinosaur fights at the end of the day with my son.
That sounds like a good work-life balance. I love
Oh,
that.
for
Yeah,
sure.
I couldn't believe that you reached out and it was Albania. I was like, do you know what? This is absolutely meant to be.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just get straight into it then. How did you sort of get into this? How did you get into helping SaaS companies hire globally?
Yeah, so originally, I'll be honest with you, I had no intentions of becoming a recruiter whatsoever. I actually come from a different industry. I was in business consulting in the real estate side of the industry. And actually, one of my cousins, she's a sales engineer, and she was out of a job for about 3 months. And I had experience in recruiting overall. So she came to me and she was like, "Hey, I know you have experience with recruiting. Can you just help me, like, maybe look at my resume or see what I can do?" And I had no clue at the time what sales engineering was. So I learned that a lot from her. And I just realized that the pre sales or the technical side of sales on the pre and post sales side of teams was very undervalued and underserved. Even when I talked to other recruiting companies, they were like, "Yeah, we don't do that much pre-sales. It's not really our main priority." So that's what got me into recruiting overall. And then globally, it really came very organically. A lot of is something we're probably going to touch on a little bit later, but a lot of the companies that I work with when it came to hiring in the US, they also wanted to hire globally. So, I naturally started helping with that as well.
Yeah, okay, cool. I think, we'll definitely get into that, but it's interesting how you sort of seen how, they maybe are a bit more undervalued. So it's nice for you to be able to get this and actually represent them in a way that you can be like passionate about that. As you've sort of seen this develop then, is there maybe one or a few different hiring mistakes that you see companies are just repeating again and again as you are speaking to them?
Yeah, I think I will be mentioning these mistakes like all the time. And they never really learn until they still make them. And then they're like, okay, like I've learned my mistake. But really, number one, it comes down to hiring reactively instead of strategically. And I know that can be very hard as a leader, as a founder, especially if you're just starting up, is that fine line of, planning to hire for the growth versus, hiring because we don't necessarily need it now. But really planning for hiring reactively is one of the biggest mistakes that I see is usually when they come to me, they'll be like, "I need somebody yesterday. Like, how fast can we find it?" And it's like, "Okay, I hear you. I know we need to get somebody, But at the same time, to get the right person for the team, it's going to take a little bit of time. It does not just happen in one week. Recruiters are not like, we don't have like a magical wand and then we, bring somebody up and it's perfect for that team. So that's number one. Number two, I would say sometimes they're very strict on the perfect profile, quote unquote. So what I mean by that is, for example, we'll get plenty of companies that will come to us and they'll say, I want somebody that has been at this company, started there when there was like 10 people and then they grew it to like 50, and they have this specific background and I don't want to deviate from those specific profiles. And it's cool, and sometimes you will get very lucky to get somebody like right away from those types of profiles, but really the pool of talent that you're pulling from is so small that you're gonna have to be waiting for a long time if you be very, very strict on that. And then the third one I will say is, when it comes to global hiring, is misunderstanding culture, especially if you're a US company hiring for like outside of the US. It's completely different cultures. And obviously, I know that from firsthand experience. When I first moved here, I was culturally shocked at everything, literally even down to things like how you open up the door, like it's backwards in the US, or at least I thought it was back then, versus like in Albania, you open it to the left versus to the right. So all those things are just like culturally shocking. And understanding the different cultures that people come from is huge in global hiring. And I don't just mean that like US versus Europe versus, Latin America. It's like even in Europe, like the UK from Spain, completely different cultures, like from all these different countries. So I think that's like their top three mistakes that I see happening a lot often.
Yeah, no, definitely. I really like these, and I feel like we'll be able to delve into them as we go along. I think this hiring reactively instead of strategically is just like, it's such a ridiculous concept that it's whether the strains on the HR teams and they're just being told that they need to hire
Yeah.
that. But then it's like, every team needs to be constantly in the loop. And if then this reactive hiring is obviously started from the employee not being recognized that they're not enjoying their job. And like, you
Yeah.
need to be strategically in everyone's role, looking after their career, seeing where they're at with it, constantly checking in. Because then if you're not, this is how a reactive hire can happen, because nobody knows that, oh, we didn't check in with David for the past few months. He's been quite quiet.
Yeah.
And maybe he's been remotely working, so you need to communicate a little bit better. And then if he's all of a sudden like, well, I've not been able to keep up with projects, it's been overwhelming, I've not been speaking to anybody for 2 months, it's actually not reactive. It's actually been happening for a long time, but no one's even checked in with him. So if he leaves, then the hire needs to be quick and reactive, but maybe it actually wasn't the HR person. Well, it could have been something that no one was checking in, leadership, etc., and then that leads to
Reactive hiring. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think it comes into like, it leaks into the rest of the team. Right now the team has to make up for that backflow, and now they're getting burned out, and it's like, I can't wait to hire somebody. Then you, because of the pressure, you start maybe even hiring the wrong person, which shouldn't have been hired to begin with.
So it's just everything from like the employee journey needs to be sort of really like looked after and stuff, because that can cause at the very end a really sort of eroded teamwork and project management. And so yeah, I really like that, and that is definitely sort of one of those mistakes. And if you can be strategic with it and realize that maybe if there wasn't a hire, right, okay, the work's going to be spread across, but actually let's try and look for someone in 2 months' time, and in the meantime get in a contractor and just fill that void for a little bit of time until something. So finding different ways to look at that, I really like that. And yeah, definitely been too rigid about these perfect profiles. Like it gets, and then also I guess this plays into the sort of AI card as well, because if you are if AI, you can get like scannings of CVs now, and if you put a certain amount of rules in, and it's just discarding people that have worked at a certain company or don't have this skill in it, and you're going to be missing out on so much talent that if you just had a conversation with them, they actually might have missed that off their CV. Like, you just don't know these things, and you definitely can't be too rigid, because you're closing like too many of
You're
those
losing
doors.
out. Yeah, you're losing out on a lot of people. I always like to say as well is like, you don't want to hire somebody that's like 100% fit for the job. You want to hire somebody that's an 80% fit because it also allows them to grow. Somebody that's coming in and it's like fully 100% with nothing to learn. Guess what? They're going to get bored out of doing that over and over again. And now they're going to start looking at new opportunities even faster than they thought possible because they just don't feel challenged. And even when I talk to talent and candidates consistently, their biggest thing is, I want to be challenged. I've hit my growth here. I can't grow anymore. And that's one of the top reasons why they leave their initial job. And you don't want to be that reason when you just hire them, 3 months in.
Yeah, it's like I've got you a perfect hire, but they could actually be a bit too perfect
Yeah,
that they won't stay there very long.
for sure.
Yeah, I get that. And then, yeah, I think absolutely this part about misunderstanding culture in global hiring, like, it's so key. And I think this has to be integrated into like the way leadership and HR teams are like welcoming people into the company, and also like making sure that people understand each other's cultures. We have a really good thing at Remote Fairs called Donut Chats, and it randomly selects people in the company to have like a 30-minute call with. And I've spoken
Oh,
to
that's
people
pretty cool.
all across the world. Like, I spoke to someone the other week from Egypt, and she was, because I'm getting married next year, and she just got married, so she was talking about like traditional ways, and I was telling her, and it was so interesting, even just from like a really conversational point of view, to find out about someone in the business that I would never have connected with before, all about their culture.
I
So
love that. How does that
yeah,
work specifically? Is it like, are you guys like in a pool or something and it just randomly selects people?
it's like a AI bot which is integrated into our Slack. So it
Love
like
that.
so that's a quite little way
Great
to
tip.
integrate that in. But yeah, talking about this global hiring shift then. So I guess as we've gone from remote hiring post pandemic, I think that was definitely something that increased it, and we all know that. How have you seen like the global hiring landscape sort of change over the last few years?
Yeah, great question. And I think like just like you mentioned, I think there's like an era like pre-COVID and then like an era post-COVID. Even now, I think like when like you said, post COVID, like right away everybody just obviously was forced to be remote, and it just opened up the eyes of companies of like not just like remote working in the US but like globally. They had access to way more talent than ever. And now it's actually kind of interesting because companies are now, it's kind of like past that remote era, and now they're just trying to figure out, okay, do we stay remote, do we get in office, can we build a culture with both? Which is what's happening a lot right now. But I will say the first thing is that speed right now matters more than ever, whether that's in hiring specifically or whether that's in just the product development or, being the first to get to things. But speed is the most important thing than ever. And, obviously we have AI to thank for that as well, which is making things super fast, evolving very, very fast. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, kind of going back to what we just talked about when it's not hiring reactively but proactively, is treating hires like sales. You have to constantly build what I call a bench of people and talent, that it's not like an, I guess bench could sound negative in a way for the candidates, but not necessarily, because what it means is you're having conversations with your talent, with potential candidates, and you're just being completely honest with them, and you're saying, hey, I don't have somebody or a role right now, but here's why I think you're a perfect fit, so that when that role opens up, I would love to have this conversation with you again. And you're just having tons of those conversations because, again, hiring is, I think, what most leaders that really scale like crazy, SaaS, all these good companies, they understand that hiring is what's going to make or break their company. You can have the best product in the world if the people that you're using to push it out to, produce customer service, to all of that is not good. Nobody's going to care, and you're just going to slowly die a very painful death as a company. So that's why hiring is crucial. I mean, before even products sometimes. And then the next thing I would say is that like I said, pre-COVID, local first, we'll have some random remote and global hires here and there. But right now, it's like it's like global default. I have not worked in a company in the past 2 years where I've never had like a scenario where they not only are located in the US, but they also have global hires. So it's like a default thing nowadays. And I think it's great. I think it's giving tons of opportunity to even world countries and changing people's lives over there. And they're so hungry to work and get better. So I think those are the three main things in terms of like how global hiring has changed in the last few years.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that word speed comes up quite a lot, doesn't it? Especially in the landscape of like startups and scale ups. Like they want to be the fastest startup, the fastest product.
Yeah.
But they're also built into, as you said, hiring these people. It's like you want to hire at speed, but also you don't want to just be hiring for hiring's sake, because that's when people are made redundant in such a sort of fast scaling environment. But yeah, treating them like sales, I think, is a quite little thing. And yeah, I think having those conversations with those people, they then get to learn what is happening in the world of hires and maybe what jobs are hiring at the moment. But yeah, you can see how companies are wanting to be global as like more of a priority now than being just like a big HQ based in like the Netherlands and that's the only thing they have. I think if they have more of like a global employee database, it looks a lot better as well for the company, because they can see they're distributed across the world and they have people in different countries for customer service and stuff as well, because they've got the different time zones and things. So yeah, I think that is definitely where, if it's not now, definitely where it's sort of headed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, sometimes we'll even have founders that start with global first and then bring it on to the US. At least in our industry and within SaaS, the beautiful thing about it is like the product can serve any company. It doesn't discriminate whether it's a US company versus like a global company. The product will work the same. Now, obviously, mind you, there'll still be some differences and things like that, but that's the beauty of SaaS. And having somebody, for example, from the UK that sells to US companies or UK companies, they will understand their customer better than a US person ever will. They might be very technical savvy, but the UK person will understand their culture better and will know how to relate to that client better. So I think that's a beautiful thing overall.
Yeah, exactly. From asking them how the weather is to what the football score
Right.
was.
See,
Exactly.
you have a US person and a European person talk about football. We'll be talking about like American football, and you guys will be talking about soccer at the same time. So
And that's an exact sort of thing to do with culture there.
yeah.
Okay, so then as we are sort of talking about this hiring process, what do you then think are the biggest hurdles HR teams face when scaling pre and post sales globally?
Yeah. I would say three main things, which number one and number two kind of go hand in hand: role clarity and cultural alignment, which we kind of mentioned a little bit already. I think role clarity is important because sometimes, and this doesn't necessarily happen just globally, but even as leaders, the leader that is managing the global team has to be very, very savvy in understanding how to manage different personalities, different cultures, all those things that we talked about. Because sometimes we'll have it in our head of what we expect that person to do, but doesn't always come out in like written words or, in a piece of paper or whatever, or in a Zoom call. And we just expect that person to know because maybe the US person did it. So that's really big. I think having really clear expectations of very much clarity on what that person is supposed to do versus not is huge. Going back to the cultural alignment, understanding that for some cultures, like family is very important. So when they say like, hey, I'm having family time, like that really means something to them versus, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the US doesn't value that, but for somebody else, that might not be as much. In Spain, we have the 2-hour breaks every day of siestas. And I'm not saying that they need to apply those exact rules, but again, that's where that expectations and understanding cultural differences, comes to play. And then the last thing I would say is lack of systems and structures. It's one thing to manage somebody, locally, and it's completely different to manage a whole team globally. Even with you guys, like you mentioned, for example, with Slack and like those random calls that, you get to meet people from the different parts of the world. I think it's huge. Like you have to know how to build cultural how to build culture within a remote team. That's huge. I know companies that do all sorts of things. Obviously, they'll do like a global, their yearly like meeting with everybody globally coming together. I think it's huge right nowadays because everything's so remote that you still have human interaction with who your teammates are, with who you're working with, your leaders. You just build that personal relationship way more or way better in person versus like just remote. So knowing how to structure, your teams globally is huge. And of course, the systems as well that come with it. So those are the three things I would say: role clarity, culture alignment, and lack of systems and structure.
Yeah, definitely. And especially think with the role clarity thing is really thing to look at in terms of remote teams as well, because when people are starting their role, it is just them on a laptop, and
Yeah.
something that they might need to speak to at the start of the day might not be actually online till 3 p.m. So if the role clarity hasn't been given to them at the start of their working day when they're logging onto their laptop for the first time, like how are they meant to know actually what to do? So making sure like the onboarding process for them is really structured, and yeah, there's cultural alignment. If they say, well, actually I won't be online at this time because of this and this, and it's making sure that everything is really understandable to each person, especially on like a remote environment. And just making sure they have the systems in place for this. Like even on Google Calendar, you can mark your working hours. So you can see that if you book a time with someone, it actually is outside of their working hours, and you understand the boundaries. I know, especially in a remote setting, it's much harder sometimes to be like, right, I'm having to stop work now because
Yeah.
it's in your bedroom or in your office space in your house. And having that separation is key for like a remote worker. So making sure there's those systems in place so that you are making sure that everyone still has those boundaries whilst
Yeah.
working together. Well,
I will say it's become very, very common nowadays where leadership or founders expect their employees or their team members to work outside of working hours, which is fine. The expectations are there, that happens. But again, like you said, if I do that constantly as an employee, I'm going to burn out. At the end of the day, I don't own the company, right? Like you are the founder, you are the leader, you're the owner of that company, and you are expected to do all of that. And I understand as a team member coming in that I'm going to have times where I work late. I'm going to have times where, I work more than I'm expected, and I'm agreeing to that. But doing that on a constant basis, it can be very, very draining for somebody, being in that team. And like you said, if it's after working hours, like the Europe time is already like you guys are already 8 hours ahead of us minimum. So, when I'm taking a call at 3 p.m. my time, for you is already like 9, 10 p.m. and you're already burned out. I mean, it's how much can you really function the 12 to 18 hours a day of, or totally working all the day? And it's draining. And then sometimes employees don't even want to mention that because they want to keep their role. So, they kind of submit to those requests. But of course, the lack or, it affects their mental ability to really perform, and they get tired, they get bored, and then they want somebody or a different company that can give them that structure and a little bit more boundaries.
yeah, no, definitely. I think that is key because people like do want to perform well, especially as I say, remote working teams. They want to appear present. They want to look like they're constantly overachieving if they've got a job that they really wanted there. So that
Right.
is eventually going to cause burnout. And maybe the thing was that maybe they could have shouted up and say, actually, I do need a bit more help. But it can be tough. You're not in sort of an environment which is given that opportunity to project that. So I think that sort of plays into those systems and structure and making sure that everyone sort of knows exactly what they're doing. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
So then in terms of hiring then, is there any sort of regions or markets that are maybe becoming like little sort of hidden talent hubs that you've seen popping up as you're hiring?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to shamelessly plug my own country here, Albania. I think that it's interesting. I mean, we do have personally like a ton of like technical talent. We're very hardworking people. We come from a culture where hard work is just expected. And funny enough, every time I've talked to companies that have hired Albanians before, they always have good things to say about them. So, shameless plug there. Of course, Latin America has always been like known for their hard work, for their willingness to grow and learn and just do whatever it takes type mentality. I will say there's also some countries right now in Europe that are also kind of like hidden technical talent hubs of, countries like Poland, Romania, Serbia is also a great country. Where there's a lot of deep technical talent. Interestingly enough, I am personally seeing Africa come up a lot lately as well. It didn't used to be it. It used to be more like India and all that, which obviously that's still a big hub. But I am seeing a lot of people now from hiring from Africa because they do have that technical talent, and they're also very hungry to work, hungry for money too. So they're really open. So yeah, that's those are like some of the main hubs that I've seen lately where we've seen companies hire from or just really good talent.
Yeah, nice. It's nice to know that, especially plugging into our platform where you can sort of hire from anywhere, and all those digital nomad visas that have been popping up and working remotely. I think it's good to find out some of these hidden talent hubs that people might actually want to even work from when they're hiring for us. So yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Really nice little insight. So as we sort of talk about this speed and sort of quality and cultural fit, how do you think HR teams should balance this sort of outlook on when they're hiring?
Yeah, great question as well. So, a couple of things that we've already kind of mentioned, but maybe just kind of, giving them, boom, boom, boom. But first thing is building before you need. Don't really start searching again when that pain hits. Always have a bench of talent that you've already talked to, that you've kept warm. Start building that talent pipeline early. And that will honestly just help you not sacrifice your company standards. As HR teams, especially if you're building globally, and again, you have that pressure from the leaders that we need somebody like right now, you will probably end up sacrificing that standard. So just doing that already on the front end, will help you with that. Two, systemizing the process. So I think that in terms of like standards, KPIs, what's expected of them, all talent should be the same, whether they're global, or US based. I don't think there should be a difference there because everybody has that capability if you're hiring right to have structured scorecards, clear interview stages, aligned expectations. And that will obviously, protect again the quality of the people you're attracting, but also reduce bias in the process. The next thing I would say is partner with specialists. If you're a US company that's, for the first time hiring in the UK, hire a recruiter maybe that already has experience with that. Partner with specialists, whether it's a recruiter or a company like Remote First, where you guys have the understanding already of how things work legally on the tax perspective, but even on a hiring perspective, it's you don't have to lose money while making those mistakes and also save you time as well. Like there's so much right now that so many things you can rely on to not be able to repeat those mistakes. I would say from there, use tech, but don't over rely on it. And I will probably touch on AI a little bit more later, but of course, AI is huge for, manual tasks and, speeding up that process. So they can help you shortlist talent faster. But the culture fit, I mean, still comes down to human judgment. There's, at least right now, I don't know if maybe in my lifetime or, what happens next, but AI is just not there yet. So blend the two together, blend automation for speed, but conversation for alignment. And we use light AI in our company too, but what we do is we always go back and double check on it. Honestly, we've had so many talent pulled out from AI that disqualified them that it's just, you just end up missing it because AI is very black and white. And the last I would say is keep communication tight. Not in the sense of, constantly talking to people and like being, like on top of them, but weekly check-ins, between hiring managers and HRs and keeping the momentum high. Again, going back to those expectations and clarity, that will kill all delay. So I think those are like the biggest things when it comes to HR teams and how to balance speed with quality.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I really like the point that you're making about systemizing the process as well, because I do think that is key with hiring. And I think that helps everybody that's involved in the
Yeah.
process. Interviews are such like an emotional thing. It's something like you're putting a lot of yourself on the line in every interview. It's a lot of effort that you have to put forward. You have to research a lot of the company, you're applying to that specific job and you want that, but like the companies that you're applying for have to realize that each person's probably got a few other job interviews on at the same time as well.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, if they're leaving people hanging for days on end, maybe weeks, they're going to need to realize that if they want this talent so badly, they need to be constantly keeping them in the loop, giving that offer letter out like so fast, and you like so you can communicate as well back to that candidate. Like it's tough if they aren't sort of holding up their end of the stick as well in the interview process, because they're putting so much effort into that. And I think like the companies need to be giving that back to them as well. And they can be like, well, why is that candidate not saying yes now? Well, they've got another job. We didn't get back to them for 2 weeks. Like, what? How would you expect that to happen? So yeah, like a structural process.
I will say this. I think sometimes from companies, there's this like stigma of like, I don't want to show too much interest too fast because they're going to think, that we're desperate. And my opinion is, who cares if that person really fits what you're looking for? You need to speed that up like fast, like now, tomorrow, have all interviews like the day after, etc. Like you're just going to lose. I mean, once you recognize what good talent is in an interview process, you're going to want to move fast on them because although right now, I will say this, although right now is a tougher job market, top talent is still moving fast. I mean, we're not, I still compete with other offers when we're making offers to our own talents that we're trying to interview and hire for these companies. And we compete with other companies because they recognize the same thing. So it doesn't matter. I mean, like I said, who cares if they think you're desperate? You should be desperate to hire really good talent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really key thing there because yeah, if they're showing that they want the talent in the first place, I think sometimes with interview processes as well, you can have like 3, 4 people interviewing the person, and maybe the fourth interview is the actual one that matters because maybe the manager or the person that's hiring. And maybe if you took away the 3 in the middle and you had someone to screen and the manager, and what if that was the easiest way to make the decision? So it's just like trying to make sure that the process is efficient enough so that the process being too longed out and everyone's aligned with the expectation of, okay, so I'll have 3 interviews here, maybe in 2 weeks time I'll know if I've got the job or not, and just having that sort of basis. But it's hard to say that it is because
I will say the interview process is something that can be very defeating to candidates going through it. Having a very long interview process. And honestly, I understand if we're talking about like a CEO level or, VP level. Yes, those roles should be, longer processes, way more alignment to be done than just like an individual contributor role. But we'll have these roles sometimes of individual contributor that are like 7 to 8 rounds of interview. And I'm like, how much more does this person need to go through to fully showcase that, that they're fit or not? In my opinion, standard should be 3 to 4 rounds. Of course, always including some sort of like, job, like testing, making sure that, or a take home assessment. I see a lot of people do. That's very normal. I think that's great. Anything beyond that, I mean, again, when other companies recognize that top talent, that person might be gone. So by the time they get to the 8th round, they're already gone. So yeah, the really honing in as an HR company or HR department on what that interview process looks like is huge. One thing I personally do to every single candidate I talk to, I always set that expectation up front. So I won't even work with clients if they don't have a clear idea of what the hiring process looks like. If they're like, yeah, let's just bring me talent and then, we'll figure it out. I'm like, no, okay, that's fine, but we won't start the process until you figure that out because then you keep people dragging. And honestly, it makes me look bad too, being in the middle. So I think that's huge.
Wasting everybody's time involved.
Yeah.
Not what we want. We want speedy, optimized, efficient process. But yeah, as well, touching on partner as specialists. Love that. Thank you. And you obviously don't over rely on it, but I think that's going to move us swiftly into our next little segment that I want to jump in at, which is how AI is changing the job market as we know it. And we do know it is. We do have to be very cautious of it and use it at our own game, but also like just sort of play with it alongside us and not sort of plug it in as a full-time thing for anything. So I guess for you, how have you maybe seen how AI is changing the way companies are hiring talent?
Yeah. And honestly, we'll touch on this a little bit too. There's so many products out there right now that are like, replace your full human recruiter with just an AI. And we're just not there yet. And I'll tell you why. So, AI is great for speeding up sourcing, right? It will help you kind of speed through looking at resumes and, like I said, kind of shortlist your talent. And it can map hundreds of profiles in minutes instead of, maybe takes you 2 to 3 hours or even sometimes days. On the other hand, though, it's completely black and white. It goes by the parameters that you give it, and it doesn't always like give it weight. So what I mean by that is, let's just say you come to me with three criteria, and it's like, hey, I want this person to be, based in London. I want them to have technical experience through sales, and I want them to be from a Martech background. AI will see those three and weight them all three equally. But in our conversation, you can say that ideally they'd want to be Martech, but I don't necessarily need them to. If that person doesn't have that in his background, AI would be like, nope, out next, right? And we're missing on that talent. Versus me humanly looking at it, I can say, okay, they check off like all these other boxes. They don't necessarily have this specific industry background, but I can work with that. Let me at least have a conversation. So it cannot see potential. But I will say definitely frees, whether it's the HR department or you as a recruiter, it frees you from those manual, repeatable, boring, annoying tasks. And it just helps you focus better on relationships building versus, the manual tasks.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that is a key thing that, yeah, it's black and white. It's not got the emotional element, which is what
Yeah,
the employers have. And I think, yeah, even if it was like location London, people sometimes don't even put London. People might put their postcode on their
for
things.
sure.
But
Yeah,
I've got that live like a 40-minute train ride out in like a little town, but they can commute into London every day if they needed to, but they just won't have London on their CV. So you're missing out on that for a chunk.
for
More tech,
sure.
exactly. Some companies might not even be labeled as this as a good thing. They might just say that they're a SaaS company, a marketing company, a HR company. So yeah, I think that example is a really good one to sort of show how that black and white cannot be read. I think this sort of human eye. But yeah, I totally get how it can help sort of free up time with those manual tasks that maybe are taken a little bit further. But I do think it needs to be a combination of the human element, maybe using that as a side piece to it type thing. So where do you think perhaps AI is adding the most value, and then where do you think then humans should take the lead in this hiring process?
Yeah, so it'll be kind of a similar conversation, but just a little bit further deeper. Again, AI is great at researching, sourcing, even finding hidden talent faster than you could just clicking all these filters and trying, and all of that. I think it's great for that. Screening and automation. So again, filtering candidates, it's not that it's always 100% wrong, but you still have, as a human, still go back and check on everything that it denied and see, okay, did we miss any hidden potential there? It's great for like things like automation too. When it is taxing, and sometimes as recruiters or even HR departments, you're dealing with a lot of roles, right? You don't just have one role and like five people to respond to. You typically have like 5 plus 20 roles sometimes with hundreds of people to respond to. So, for example, when you disqualify somebody and automatically gives them an email, of like, and it will draft that email and say, I'm so sorry, unfortunately, we decided to move a different direction. It's very helpful to give that person quote unquote closure for that role, right? Versus waiting endlessly and never hearing back. So I think those things are huge. Definitely helps with data driven insights, even as recruiters or as HR leaders, you want to understand data when it comes to hiring. Who's not only who's most likely to succeed in specific types of roles, but also in how long did it take me to fill this role? Why did it take me this long to fill this role? How can I make it better for next time? So all those things I think for data driven is huge. And when it comes to human approach, definitely still assessing culture, understanding what we mentioned, like emotional intelligence. Wow, emotional intelligence. seeing for that potential, the human potential and their motivation. Then from there is the storytelling, selling the opportunity. It doesn't matter. I mean, in an interview, yes, mainly the company, let's just say, holds the biggest power in the beginning. But as you narrow down on candidates, then the story switches. Now you have to sell them and make sure that you're a good fit for them, so they can also choose you. So that's where human interaction comes in. Also building trust. It's kind of funny is, when you see a lot of AI things, you sometimes assume they're scams, right? Like you're like, hey, is this a real opportunity or is this just AI? So that also helps build trust on the human side. And then turning those, again, candidates into believers in the company, the vision, the mission that you guys are trying to grow. So I think human touch is still huge in this area.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, yeah, we spoke about the sort of CV searching and filtering, but if instead, for example, going back to this one, instead of saying London, we're saying United Kingdom, and maybe it's getting rid of those candidates outside of it, and it's maybe not using the filters and searchings to be so niche, but actually just doing it on a bit of a wider scale
Yeah, great.
to then deeper into sort of the existing, so it can make a certain amount of applicants go from 5,000 to 1,000 rather than 5,000 to 100, and you're missing out on that 900 people.
Absolutely.
These searches. But yeah, data-driven insights as well. I really do sort of like this, especially for yourself, seeing if you've got the job on the careers page, on LinkedIn, and maybe on a job board, you're seeing, or via Google, you're actually seeing how they found that job, and you're seeing the pathway that most employees are taking. If it is the careers page, that's great. But maybe if it's not and it's LinkedIn, do you need to make your careers page stand out a little bit more on your website? Do you need to find it easier to navigate? Do you need to maybe put some imagery, videos, add those core values on there to maybe create more traffic to push towards that? So I think that's a great way to find out where the candidates are coming from, to help you as well as a company to push that out there and to see for yourself where that's coming from. And yeah, I definitely think for this sort of storytelling side, this emotional intelligence side, like you can't get that. And that's exactly where you're going to play into it, selling that opportunity, building trust, and you're not going to, if you're applying for a role, you're not going to be able to ask the AI, so what's your thing about working at a company? Like the AI is not going to be able to do that. It's like, for sifting through. Like it's those real stories that grasp people's attention to want to work for a company in the first place, I think, and seeing it from people who are actually involved in the company, seeing them succeed, the projects they're involved in, and how that is displayed, I think is that really key part of that. So yeah, I really like that. And then I guess, what sort of practical strategies then can HR leaders start to use maybe to leverage AI
Yeah.
effectively?
Yeah, I mean, first things first, I would say don't fall for the no human approach, no recruiter approach type AI products out there. They're definitely helpful to add on to what you're already doing. And honestly, right now, there's like products out there where you meet with the AI to screen the candidates, which I can see how that could work for some companies, especially if they're bigger brands. Like if you're mentioning companies like Gong or Google, like I can see why the trust is already there. So it's more, somebody will be more attuned to do that. But, if you're a smaller startup, again, kind of goes back to like, is this a scam? Do I even want to work for this company, et cetera? So just don't fall for that yet, especially if you're a startup. Start small, automate things like sourcing or outreach, integrate it with your ATS or your CRM. So you can build, little, what I call them recipes of like, when this happens, then do this, right? Type stuff. I think that's really important and huge. Again, takes away all those annoying like manual tasks. One of the biggest things is, for example, have it fill out your CRM notes. There's plenty of AI out there where is in, whether you're in sales or even as HR, like you need to fill like the scorecard for the person you just interviewed. If you have like your AI transcript, there's some out there that will take that and then plug it into each of those questions and answer it. So those are great ways to use it. And then from there, obviously, just combine that with human checkpoints. Don't skip conversations that will really uncover somebody's like real intent or soft skills. But I would say those are like the few things that we're personally using it. which I believe a lot of people are too. And then I'm sure that if we did the same podcast here in 2 years, my answer might be different, but that's what I would say is relevant right now.
No, definitely, yeah. And I think also touching on the sort of automation side of the email and things, it's nice to have, even if maybe you haven't got the job. I think it's always nice to have the email saying that you weren't successful. I think it is a really nice point, because you are waiting to get back from companies that maybe you really did want to get through to, but if you don't get the email that you never got through, or they went through with another candidate, you're sort of always left wishing. And then also, I know some companies have on policies like you can't reapply in the next 3 months if you already applied and things like that. But if you're sort of not at closure with them, it's like an emotional relationship. It's like if you don't
Yeah,
not have closure, then you don't know where you're sort of lying in the future application. So yeah, I think that's good. And then it also helps with like scheduling interviews, suggesting if AI can link with the person that's going to be interviewing and link their calendar and see those available points, and you can use that to select timings that suit with you. That's also removing a step of having that person come into the conversation. These are my times. Just integrating little platforms and things that can showcase when people are available to make that process a little bit more smoother.
absolutely.
Yeah, combining it with those human checkpoints is sort of exactly what we're saying. Yeah, definitely. It might be different in the future, but this is what we're saying now. So,
For sure.
um, have you had any I'd love to hear if there's any like specific stories or anything that you've had from maybe companies getting like measurable results with AI driven hiring, or like sort of having that integrated into their process.
Yeah, again, having it integrated to the process, yes, I think a lot of companies are already doing it, and I think that's huge. It's definitely success that there, but true replacement of human work, I haven't heard of any company, at least as of yet. It's actually kind of funny because I was at a conference once, and I heard the CMO of HubSpot. She was speaking, and she was talking about how we need to implement AI here and workflows here and automate this, and like we're reaching out to so many people at all the time. And then somebody from the audience asked, how do you like to be approached? Like if I'm coming to you and pitching something. And she was like, yeah, if it's AI driven, I'm not going to do anything with it. I would prefer human approach. So it's just funny how, like we're as companies, we're always thinking like, how do I automate this so that I can take, 20 people in one touch? But when you're on the receiving end, you're like, oh, AI again. I don't want to deal with this. You can tell. So I just always think now in the day that we're in, where everything's like so AI driven, we just become more hungry and crave more human touch than ever, not just, recruiting, but on any aspect of the business or even personal life.
I think that is so, so true. It's fastly becoming a full circle. You can see from anything from LinkedIn statuses to email outreach. I'm like, when there's those emojis and everything, I'm like,
The M dash, yes.
yeah. It's like, I know that this is AI generated.
Yeah. At least take the time to remove the emoji and the M dash, all those weird faces.
And I 100% get it if you're using it to summarize data and things that you've already got before, and using it as a tool to build up upon, I think is what we're sort of saying here. But yeah, and now weirdly, I think people are wanting to hear an email from a human and be like, oh, that's definitely from a human.
Yeah, you tend to respond to that more now than AI driven ones, for sure.
It's definitely coming full circle, which is quite a sort of funny thing, actually.
Yeah. I don't know if you've gotten these emails before, but my favorite ones right now are the ones that are AI driven, but they look like human touch, where it's like, like for example, I'm in Columbus and I went to St. Bonaventure University, and it'll say like Columbus plus St. Bonaventure. And it's like, okay, I see you're trying to connect with me on a personal level, but I can tell AI just went to my profile and picked like 5 random things
Yeah.
and will ask me like questions about the Bonnie's event, and it's just funny to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you sometimes think, well, at least you've tried.
At
But
least you've tried.
and
Yeah.
like, once you're finding the right people, and then sort of as we're building these high performing global teams, global sales teams, And then you sort of want to, as they're integrated into the business, you want them to be long-term contributors to the business. Firstly, obviously, to showcase that the talent that you've got is obviously hired and is sort of making a really good impact to the business, and the business are appreciative of the employee, etc., etc. So I guess starting off with this conversation, so what do you think separates companies that retain global hires from those that don't?
Yeah. If I would summarize it in one word, it would be the role clarity and expectations that we mentioned before. But to dive that and kind of break that down deeper is number one, you actually hire somebody that is, especially if you're in the startup stage, obviously this is like the most common scenario, but you hire somebody that is competent enough to help you build onboarding, help you build training, and help you build all of that systems and processes that we talked about, or have actual onboarded already so that when you hire somebody, you're onboarding them properly. Number two, I would say they build trust early. Again, clarity around goals, feedback, expectations. What is it that they need out of that employee or team member in order for them to perform and be successful in this role is huge. Number three is they invest in communication. So recurring one-on-ones as managers or as leaders, those are really crucial. Cross team like syncs and keeping the remote hire connected, with what's happening in the team. We do something as well. I've seen companies do their quarterly like town hall meetings, they call them, where they just include everybody in the company. They have, they talk about goals, then they recognize people, MVPs, and all that stuff. It's huge. Next, I would say aligning on the purpose. So employees stay when they see how their work really impacts the company. And nobody wants to feel devalued where they're at. Like they want to see, it gives you joy, of course, like getting an outcome to something that you're doing. It gives you purpose as a human being. We all have purpose, as human beings. So I think that's really huge. And then I would say, kind of what we talked about already is, but respecting cultural differences. Again, flexibility in work holidays, work styles, communication. One thing I do personally, because I also have a global team, is I always let them pick like 2 to 3 holidays in their country that are not US holidays and they really want to celebrate. I think obviously that's huge. So just understanding those and being able to align. And that's why it's really important having a leader that either is willing to do all these things or has worked in something like this before and they know how to build that trust.
Yeah, no, I think they are some really good points, especially for a global team. Like building that trust is such a key foundation for global and remote teams. I think it, and like building that clarity, I think that is the like sort of number one solid foundation that needs to be built. And then, yeah, making sure that they're aligning on the purpose. People love to see how their projects have succeeded
Yeah.
and see how that's scaled on and being part of that entire journey. Also being inclusion in things that if there's different policies changing, different sort of things, being also always included, because if that's going to impact you, then you need to sort of know about that before the impact takes place type thing. So yeah, that is really key. It's just that trust, clarity, and communication. I think, yeah, are really, really key things there. So thanks. And then, yeah, so as we delve into this sort of culture aspect, is there sort of any ways that you think that HR leaders can perhaps maintain a strong culture when they are sort of jotted across time zones? And yeah, I really like your holiday thing, by the way. That's really nice.
Yeah, I think, first of all, even what you guys are doing right now, just starting with your example at Remote First, where you have this rotating kind of schedule of like, hey, we're going to meet 2 random people, selected by eye. I think that's awesome. Um, Kind of goes back to what I wanted to say, which is connecting and overlapping, connection hours of so everybody can collaborate live at least once a week. I think that's huge. Celebrating wins, people publicly and globally, not just US time zones. I've seen companies that do this for fun sometimes, where it's like, hey, this week, or not maybe this week is a lot, but one day we'll work, European hours. So you guys can see the difference of, being in a different time zone. So just those little things where it kind of makes that connection of like, okay, I'm not just like this random person that they hired here, or this random team that was built in, Europe or wherever. And we're just like, and it not even don't feel like an extension of their main team. So just doing those things, build rituals, virtual town halls, like we've talked about. We'll do sometimes like Friday shout outs for the team, like something that happened, I've seen this one team, which I really loved, is every time somebody would close a deal, whether it was on the sales side or even like on the retention side, on the customer success end, they would have like somebody on the team, like an operations manager or something like that, build like a funny like Canva thing that would just celebrate everybody and put their pictures on there and put like a funny quote from that deal that happened. So I think that's also, very, very fun little thing that you can do to help build that. And last but not least, but be intentional about visibility. Make sure that the remote teams are seen, they're not sidelined. Again, where it's like you come in and let's just say as a remote team, you start on Monday and it's like, what do you mean it changed? Oh, nobody told me. I'm just now finding out. So I think, again, just, yeah, including them, inclusivity is huge as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I like all those points. And I think those things slotted together as like a bare minimum, like overlap connection hours, like celebrating wins, building these rituals to have little things that are going to help people feel recognized in a remote environment. And yeah, being intentional. I think intentionality is a really key word in terms of culture and time zones. Like without that, I think it can really slip and people can sort of start to feel secluded, not involved. And that's definitely when maybe retention rates are going to increase because they're not seen. So yeah, I think they're really key, definitely. Okay, so we've touched upon this notion of smarter, faster hiring. So how does this sort of impact sales performance and team growth?
Yeah, great question. Um, First of all, it will shorten up ramp time. So when you're hiring as a company, you want somebody to come up to speed as soon as possible because obviously, they're impacting that bottom line. So that's number one. You'll get more qualified hires, and you'll start driving revenue sooner, right? What company doesn't want that? It will definitely reduce burnout. Teams will literally stop carrying like empty seats, right? And then having that load on top performers and burning them out too, right? You don't want to do that, especially on a prolonged period of time. We obviously that happens, right? It's just life. Like there's going to be times where a key team member leaves and other people are going to have to pick up the slack. And I think everybody understands that. But doing that for a prolonged period of time is where you start friction, where you start to see friction happening. I think it definitely also increases win rates when, for example, sales engineers align with account executives faster or customer success managers faster. All those deals will move quicker. And again, impacting the bottom line of the company, which is ideally what we want to do. It will also help with culture. And then the next biggest thing is when you have high performers, they will attract other high performers. Somebody that is, it will repel the ones you don't want, and it will attract the ones that you do want. So I think that's also huge, and it will keep the momentum. Hiring delays definitely kill pipeline velocity, especially at least on the roles that we work in. They're definitely impacting revenue. So you want to make sure that all of those things, are aligned so that you can keep momentum going and, not impact that and lose that. It's super easy as a company once you're in that momentum to like 10 exit, 20 exit. But when you're in
Yeah.
momentum and then you lose it, getting everybody ramped up again is way harder than, just keeping that going. So I think those are huge.
No, definitely. I really like that. I think this like ramp time is quite nice, like start driving that revenue sooner, especially with a hire. For example, if you salesperson gets their own now account executive and maybe they didn't have that before because there's not enough people to work with in the pipeline for that, that's only going to boost that, decrease burnout, increase win rates, because all the things there are going to only help them. And yeah, I really like that. I do think like when you see a high performer, you will sort of sway towards what they're doing rather than taking tips off someone saying, oh no, I don't respond to people within like 3 days. And they're saying, oh, well, I respond within 2 hours. It's like, oh, they're doing much better than you, so I'm going to follow them. And then that's only going to increase more and more of that, because if you see that and the more hires that are becoming like that, is only going to help your business as a whole. So yeah, I think it is. It's like positivity gets positivity and it all sort of falls back to that. So yeah, I think then it also helps build that momentum. So it's all about sort of the momentum, the sort of pushing forward And I think that helps with the faster need to scale, especially with startups and scales up. And mostly SaaS businesses are such a fast moving environment because another company with a similar product could quickly come in with a new going to take over, take your employees if your
It
product's not.
literally happens every day.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, it's
yeah.
only going to help increase your business and make it succeed more. So yeah, I really like that. Some final points. And then I guess after all of this, what sort of one piece of advice for HR leaders you would suggest who are scaling their maybe first global sales team?
Yeah, if this is their first time scaling, or even hiring remotely, like globally, I think the biggest thing is just partnering with companies or recruiters that have already done this. Whether, again, that's a recruiter or a company like your guys' self, it's just like the amount of time it's going to take you to learn the laws and the rules and the payroll and all of that is just so much easier to hire an EOR like your guys' self and just let them guide you the right way. And then same thing with, hiring from those teams. It's hire or partner with a recruiter that understands and has done that before because they will help save you so many headaches that you don't need to go through when you're first scaling. And then of course, once you already have a team and you have an understanding on how it works, then from there you can choose to do whatever it is that's best for the company. But on a first time basis, I would definitely say partner up with somebody that already has been there, done that, or knows how to navigate that. And then from there, I would say definitely hire not just people but infrastructure, so systems, onboarding, communication. All of those things have to scale with headcount. It's just otherwise it's just gonna peak and then break and then just kind of like what I call a rubber band effect because it's just going to go up and down all the time.
Yeah, it's
And then
sorry, I
yeah,
was just going to say
absolutely.
this consistent rate, which will help you to increase. Going below the consistent rate is just it's not like something that will be long lasting for your business. So definitely,
Yeah, kind of going back to that momentum that we both mentioned. It's like you already have the momentum and like you don't want to break that. Super hard to scale it back up. And then just a couple of the things that we already mentioned, but clarity, embrace cultural flexibility, different regions, but same mission type of thing. So those are, I would say, when it comes to first time globally hiring is understand that all of those are going to happen. And then last but not least, give yourself some grace, whether you're a founder or leader. There's going to be a learning lesson, no matter you're going to have a little bit of friction there because you're doing this for the first time, just like if you were to start a business for the first time. There's going to be things that you're just going to learn, and you need to be a little bit patient that you're learning those as you're going.
yeah, no, definitely. I think that's sort of summarized up everything that we've been speaking about and communication, clarity, building trust, cultural flexibility, different regions, moving with speed, and then making sure that it's all sort of under that same nest if you are growing for the first time globally. I think that really summarized our conversation in a really good way there. I know we've been speaking about everything from like remote hiring across borders and building the best HR teams with the help of yourself and making sure it's all structured, utilizing AI, but not fully sort of making sure it replaces the human connection, building in storytelling and everything like that. And then, making sure that you are dependent on systems and onboarding and culture when you are looking to build that high performing team. So thank you so much, Arvi. That is absolutely flew by. I can't believe it's literally been an hour. I just guess if there's any sort of final advice that you'd like to share at the end of this, then I'd like to hear if you've got anything
Yeah,
as
yeah.
like a little.
For sure. I mean, again, if we're talking about global hiring and scaling that way, I think the beauty, especially in the industry I'm in, which is SaaS, the beauty of it is that your product can really match with any company globally. Understanding how to build those global companies is huge. If you're hiring for the first time, again, just consider partnering with somebody that's been there, done that as vendors. I think that's going to be really, really important for you. Give yourself grace, like we just mentioned. There's going to be a lot of learning lessons and a lot of learning curves there. And last but not least, speed, speed to making decisions, speed to hiring. And really from there is going to be the leadership side of, having clarity, be very clear with expectations and all that. So yeah, that's what I would say to kind of summarize everything we just talked about.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me beforehand in sort of planning this and also this conversation. It's been really, really interesting, and to get sort of someone who's at that forefront of this hiring process, speaking to the global teams, etc. So listeners, Arvi will be tagged in all of the posts in it'll be 2026 now you're listening, which is crazy to think, but yeah, she'll be tagged in
Yes.
everything. So yeah, she can reach out to her if you've got any further questions in regards to interview tips, etc., global hiring companies. She's there to help you along the way. So yeah, thank you so much, Arvi, for this conversation, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. This has been great.
Thank you. Bye.